Well, we're going to talk when we get into the communication stuff, just about some observations that you know I noticed, just like about what seems to work online. Um, although things are definitely changing on Twitter, at least. So yeah. Oh, hey Bear. Hey Isaac. Um, all right, let's get this started. Um, so simple check-in today, just basic intentions and distractions. Um, let's go with Marathon Mind. Do you want to kick it off?
Intentions, just to give the updates. Distractions, none really. I'll pass it on to Isaac.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, cool. Uh, Intentions, well, uh, catch up and talk about all the different things we have to talk about. And distractions, I I had I didn't have the best night, so I'm a little bit tired, but uh, gotta deal with that. I'll pass it over to Bear.
Thank you. Yeah, intentions. Yeah, go through the agenda items. Talk about the March budget. I think that's gonna be interesting and important. And I currently I don't have any distractions, so I'll pass it to Nate.
Yeah, my intention is to just work through this agenda, kind of give everybody updates on the status of the conviction voting forum post and plans for the conviction voting changes. And then distractions are, I'm kind of in the same boat as Isaac. My kid didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I was waking up a lot, so a bit tired. But yeah, I'm focused in here. So I'll pass it over to Acid.
Thanks. My intentions just to catch up with you guys and see the news and maybe plan the next Twitter Spaces and distractions. I think I have no distractions. And back to you, Gideon. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, basically, for me, the intentions are baked into the agenda. Distractions, I might have some people hammering down below starting in a little bit. So if that happens, well, you'll just have to tell me if it's too hard to hear me. Okay, so I think one thing I'd like to do is, rather than having everybody do updates on everything, I think maybe let's today just try, like, if there are like important things, like really urgent, or not urgent, but like things that you think everybody needs to hear about. Now would be a great time to just do those updates. Yeah, so I'll just open it up and leave it, for folks. I mean, the first obvious one some of us were talking about earlier. Yeah, we got the ENS grant. Awesome. Really cool. So that's one. And anything else?
I'll make a very quick suggestion. Maybe what we do for the next meetings is, instead of per person updates, we sort of break it down by projects, and we get a quick update per project instead of per person. And as far as updates, not so much. We haven't received the ENS grant yet, but as soon as I receive it, I'll read it to Gnosis and send it to the sample/coordination multisig. And both the common pool and in grants projects are now in clarity if anyone wants to check them out.
Okay. Any other, Bear?
Yeah, just really quick updates. Payments for February, I'm hoping to be able to send them today. I'm just waiting for confirmation on an address. So we can have that done. I'll let everyone know. And the other thing is that in regards with the role self-review template, I don't know if people saw the message, but I've been working more on it. I did some changes, so I will probably be reaching out to you between today and tomorrow about the kind of like the next steps or the way I'm thinking we could move that forward. So yeah, just letting everyone know that. Then yeah, that's it for me.
Okay.
I wanted to add, I have a proposal to sideline conviction voting in the TEC. I put it in the chat here in this channel. If you want to take a look at it, today is going to be the last time for comments for alterations before I put it into a forum post for community advice process. And then after that, it'll be about a week until we start moving forward with the actual proposals. So if you get a chance, I really would like you to read through it, because there are a lot of implications associated with how we do this. And so I do think this is really important for us to go through and all kind of be on the same page with.
Great. Yeah, I actually left space in this call to talk about just a few things with the changeover. So mostly having to do with timing, actually. So we'll have a little bit of time to talk about that too. But yeah, and thanks for sharing that. And I'll look at it personally, and I think everybody else should too. It's great. Okay, anything else before we dive into the topics today? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So one thing that has been occurring to me lately, and I just wanted to have just a short conversation about this, is I think we've gone through this pretty difficult period where November, like October and November, were not that fun, and December we were turning things around, and then like in January things started to it's like, oh yeah, things are starting to like lighten up, and they're starting to become more fun again, and like we're making progress. And now it feels like a lot of stuff is moving, like things are starting to move. So one of the things that is really becoming obvious to me is that as things start to move, people start to get more interested in the TEC again, and they're going to start. I mean, you watch. My guess is over the next few months, we're going to start to see that we become easily overwhelmed by lots of different opportunities. I think that this is the next challenge that we're going into, is how do we stay focused and yet flexible, right? Responsive to what the needs are. So I think the other thing is that this is just such a small team. This is kind of the core of what I wanted to touch on today, is like this team, if you really think about it, it's just tiny, right? It's like it's not a lot of people, and it's, nobody's really full time. Although some of us, get close to it in terms of actually what we're investing time-wise in, but we're not paid full time. So, it's not a lot of resources to go around. So I think the thing that's going to be really important for us is just being ruthlessly focused and really rely on synergy, like and being iterative, like not trying to do everything all at once, but just get feedback, and then just remaining really mission focused. And I was kind of joking when I say the not going to make it thing, but sort of not. Like if we don't like really do these things, I think it's going to be tough for us and the TEC. So like focus. I think that this is the hard part here is being able to let go of things or set things aside, maybe even temporarily, if they're not like urgent and important. And then the synergy thing is just like, we've talked about this before, but I think it's just every single thing that we do, we really need to look for the places where it can support other projects that other people are working on, so that we're all rowing in the same direction and we're all like really adding value to each other's work. That's going to be the greatest source of value that we can create, is basically multiplicative. And then iteration is basically this idea that it's like, let's just, the curation service was like a perfect example of that, where we, we started it off. We didn't invest too much in it. We kept it pretty light. And, the first version of what came out of it, the Share It channel, I think, what we've learned is that it's like, we just don't have enough traffic on the TEC servers for that to really take off. So we've adjusted our investments there accordingly, and we're shifting some strategy, but we're keeping, we're keeping enough investment there. We're basically right-sizing the investment. And so this is like a good example of like remaining kind of light on our feet, entrepreneurial, testing things, staying with the minimum viable product orientation and just getting feedback before we proceed. And then the other thing is mission focus. And I mean, this is so obvious, but it's like just making sure this is almost a little bit like externally focused, like the TEC has had problems in the past where we've gotten overly focused internally. And so I think for us, we have had to, and Bear's been basically doing a big chunk of this work, me a little bit, but, basically focusing on retuning our processes. And so I think the challenge going forward is like, we really have to make sure that like the stuff that we're doing is as externally focused as possible, but that we're not like being stupid about not investing in our internal process to the point where things start to break. So, it's like a bias towards external focus and mission and stakeholders, but like making sure that we're doing just enough to scale things and ensure that things don't break. So with all of that in mind, Bear's going to get into some of this in a bit when we go through the March budget, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the project allocations for this month. He and I did kind of like a first order pass on the percentages, and so we want to talk about that today. These are pretty close to what they were before, but there are a few changes. So small grants, 20%, TEA partnership, 20%, voting changeover, 10%, Shelling Point, 20%, review periods, 20%, and then other 20%. And the thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is a little bit hard to talk about, but like I think we just need to, dive into it, is that the small grants and the academy and the vote changeover are important and also urgent. Like if we're not making progress on these things, actually there will be some negative implications for us. And so what I think this means for us is that the Shelling Point initiative is what I think we would consider important, but maybe less urgent, right? And so that means that, so for example, Nate is setting aside some time right now from Shelling Point to focus on this voting changeover, right? Why? Because we have to. So this is kind of an example of like being somewhat flexible over the course of these months as we really, try to get focus and synergy, and then, also remain focused on some of these longer term things, but know that we have to, sometimes we're going to have to adjust and move things over to more urgent things that come up. So I just want to call that out and just be really clear about that as something that I'm seeing, and I want to get some thoughts from everybody on this. And the last thing I'll just say on that is that what that means is that, you know, for Isaac doing the small grants program, part of what he's going to have to do and what I'm going to have to do with the Academy partnership is figure out like what help we need from other folks on the team and ask for it. And so this is part of the role of the project steward or whatever we call it. We're gonna have to come up with whatever the term is: project manager, project coordinator. So I'm going to stop there and just open it up for thoughts and feedback and questions.
So are these percentages for the upcoming month or this month as well? Adjusted.
We're going month by month. But, you know, there'll probably be momentum month to month, you know, unless things change, you know.
Apologies, sorry. I meant, are these percentages for applying to the month of February as well as March?
I'll let Bear answer that, but but no, it's not really February. February was slightly different.
Okay, cool. Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, no, this would be just for March. For February, they were slightly different and with different projects. If you want the detail, like the February budget, you can find it on Clarity and the March one as well, and we'll talk about that one right now, so we can compare as well. But yeah, like Gideon is saying, you know, like I really agree in this idea of focusing our efforts, our energies as a small team that we are in what's really most urgent and important to achieve. And although a lot of small projects start emerging and coming up that are also important, right? I think that will be part of the challenges that we have to be able to do as a team, as a collective, of prioritizing what we do. And I also think that it will be important that once we have better defined this process of defining outcomes for each of these projects, that we are able to prove that that results, those progress that we start making in that, right? Because otherwise it doesn't really look good, right, for us as a team to not make progress on those, even though they are like pretty selected projects and priorities. So yeah, I just think it's a good approach. I also like the feeling of things moving. It's a really great feeling that we are going through right now, and yeah, I feel that right now I'd be curious to know also, maybe we can do this a little after, but some sensations from people in terms of the percentages for this coming month. That'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, I wanted to talk just about that. So sorry. So like overall, they seem like a nice, you know, first draft or, you know, first allocation. But I think we should put a note somewhere making it explicit to revisit it, because I don't think it doesn't seem like they reflect the sense of urgency we are talking about. And you know, also, let me see how can I say this. Like, of course, there's things we don't even know. So, like for example, with Gitcoin, I cannot say how much work it is because I just don't know how much work it is. but I think it's important that as we find out more, that we rebalance those allocations, because first, I'm assuming these are economic allocations, not necessarily time allocations. But if, for example, if all of a sudden we need way more people for the grants, to review applications or whatever it is, then the 20% may fall short, and 20% may be too much for the Schelling point or for the other category. And I think it's a risk, because people could feel more incentivized to go for the products that have less time and urgency requirements, but offer similar allocations. And then, well, I guess I hope that's part of the conversation today. But I would like to um, specify more the other category, because well, first, 20% seems a bit high for something that's not specified, and then for what I just said, I think it will be best to review it so that maybe we can allocate that 20% in other ways.
That's good feedback. Yeah, I think even just as you were saying that, I think there's a lot of wisdom in there. Like the challenge, the challenge for me. I'll just speak from my own situation. So the Token Engineering Academy, what's hard for me right now is it's been moving so quickly, and there's like all these changes and things like this, that sometimes it's hard to figure out like what are the chunks of work that I can actually hand off to somebody else and ask for support with. Like it actually takes energy and resources and time to figure that out, right? This is like the project management side of it. And then there's this other issue, which is, things are changing with the academy. Priorities are kind of shifting and things are fluid. Same thing with the small grants thing. Like there's a lot we don't know. So that's not likely to be timed with our monthly planning process. And so the way I interpret how we solve that problem is that, maybe we think about our projects, and we talked about this early on, but like using these two criteria of important and urgent, right? And so the important and urgent stuff gets slotted into a category that's like, you know what, this is what we're working on. And when we have extra resources, we move people's time away from the urgent stuff and then focus on some more of the important stuff. So, that means like, and Nate, this is Nate and Marathon Mind and Joseph here. Yeah. No. So, that means that's hard. So that means thinking about the Schelling point, like what are the bare minimum things that we need in order to keep the Schelling point initiative going forward. And then also knowing that there are like certain types of activity that we can do to use like an evolutionary term, like punctuated equilibrium, like, there's like pushes that we can do when we have openings to move the project forward. I know that's not easy to do, but like I think this is kind of like part of the challenge is how do we deal with important and urgent and really make sure that we are prioritizing important and urgent and rallying resources and people around that.
I think you're exactly right, Gideon. I'm sorry, is it? Go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that when it comes to these, these percentages, I think it'd be really good to have kind of this review process. I think there's two issues that we have to look at, and the first one is saying, at the end of a month, if we're looking at, for example, small grants or something, maybe there wasn't a lot to do in small grants that month, and maybe we can, we've had more of our human capital within the TEC, and this kind of core group that we have going here has been focused on maybe the TEA partnership or the Shelling Point or the voting changeover, wherever it needs to be. That we have that ability to have individuals move from one project to another as time moves on, to where everybody kind of plugs in. Like, if we're really having this push to develop this grants program right away, I would hate for you to have to do that in isolation, Isaac. Like that's something that, if you need people to help push that forward, then it should be easy for, myself or Marathon Mind or Bear or Joseph to say, hey, where can I plug in and help? And then we account for that within the overall project allocations. The problem with that is how do we get people to be comfortable with doing that? Like Marathon Mind, for example, he's been doing an amazing job looking at the back end of for our curation service, and that's a huge effort that he's undertaking and looking at, and a problem that he's trying to solve. But if there's an ability for him to plug into the grant program, if you wanted to, making sure that we have those avenues for participation is really important. And I'd be curious to hear on Marathon Mind, like in terms of your like availability and willingness to participate in different areas. Like, is this something that you desire more flexibility, or like something that you would be interested in, like looking at different areas rather than specifically the curation service? So I think it has a lot to do with like how we, operate.
Yeah, I'm willing to plug in, and if there is any opportunities, definitely. If I'm able to do, then I'm always willing to plug in.
Yeah, and so I think that's that's a really important thing to consider, because I really do think that being able to kind of swarm around pushes to really get something done is really important, because there are times that, especially with the curation service and the Shelling Point initiative, where it's like, I would really like to have some people focusing on maybe just like one event in a week, and just say, hey, let's get a critical mass in here, and let's do this and see if we can attract some more people. It'd be really nice to have that type of support internally, and then reward that support within the project allocations accordingly. But I just think having more flexibility with this process is really something to explore.
That's actually a really nice point, in kind of in line with what I wanted to say. So maybe Gideon and I talk about this on our one, but I'll just throw the deal out. I think what's missing in our process now is more project structure. So I'm imagining, for example, like when we do these reviews, we should ideally, for the beginning of the month, have a complete project with, or at least as complete as possible with tasks and everything. And based off that, we can better project numbers and distribute allocations. And it also serves as a nice incentive. So if, for example, the grants project, it's started, I wouldn't say it's done, but it's started in Clarity. It has a few tasks. And now if we say it has 20% of the project allocation, anyone here in the team could go to the project, see the task, and say, hey, I want to do one of these tasks. By the end of the month, I present a report or something quick on how or who contributed to the project, and we distribute those funds. Because I think right now we are playing a weird game where nothing is like super clear on what we're working, but we are distributing things, so it makes it harder for people to plug in and whatever. If we had first thing is the project allocation. I think it's a powerful incentive to move funds toward the things that we consider are more important. And then if we are able to have a better and more clear project structure around it, then people could be or should be able to plug in and out of projects more easily, and so the project allocation will be a reflection of the amount of capacity we want or we are seeking. And people should, if Marathon Mind or Nate or Acid Laser or whoever wants to make some more money this month, they just have to go to Clarity and look for tasks that are not assigned and just plug into the projects that have a bigger allocation.
Yeah, so I think the challenge with the kind of there's always going to be this trade-off between fluidity and like predictability. So we tried to use the roles as a way of stabilizing people's income, and then projects to allow us to flux, and flow. I think, part of what I think both of you were getting at, Nate and Isaac, is, maybe it's easier to basically allow people to flow around projects as needed and then ask at the end of the month, like, how much time did you spend? Or like, I don't know, like allocate retroactively. But, the challenge there is that, it means I'm not sure process-wise what's the best way to do that without like creating a whole bunch of administration.
I think it's easier than what it seems like. For the first month we did this, I think it was Bear who presented a table that had the projects and the people that were supposed to work on the project, and sort of if this project had 20% and I was working on it with Nate, for example, then we would receive 10% each. I think it's pretty much the same. We just allow people to, instead of doing that internal allocation of the actual allocation of the project, we do it at the end of the month instead of at the beginning. At the end of the month, we make a sort of retroactive of the work, and if I don't know, if as a laser worked with me on the project, we allocate some of the allocation to him. But I think it's pretty much the same as what we have now.
I mean, I think there is something that we can do that's pretty simple, and that is that we can, at the end of the month, we can have this kind of predetermined percentage allocation. But at the end of the month, if a project leader for any of these projects says, hey, we've had a couple of extra contributions that need to be recognized, I'm requesting, some additional percentages of this kind of project funding, and either it can come from the other fund, or other project leads who don't have as much can recognize that and say, hey, yes, take some of this percentage and contribute it towards this effort, and just have it simply as like a project lead request additional funding for and then have it justified at the end of the month, saying, Marathon Mind joined, kind of mid-month in February for the Shelling Point Initiative, for example. And I had talked to Jay Hinney, Art, about the distribution of funds for the project stuff. And I would like to incorporate him within this, because I do think this is really important work that he's been doing for the second half of this month, and he deserves to be paid for that. And so this is one of those things where I say, okay, either I plan on, splitting up the funds that I'm getting for this project to make sure that he is compensated. But if it's possible to say, hey, I need some extra percentage, that would be nice, or some way to fund extra contributors would be really cool. But perhaps we can do a system similar to that.
So I like where this is headed. I want to get Bear's take on this. I have one addendum, maybe friendly modification. So maybe what we're doing is, so if you look at that spreadsheet, okay, let me pull up the spreadsheet. So the way you can all see this, right? So the way that Bear set this up is that these numbers are driven by the project allocation. And so maybe what we're doing, I think what we're talking about here is like these numbers we agree on at the beginning of the month. What percentage goes to the projects? I have a modification I'll get to in a second about this. But then at the end of the month, the project leader is working with the team and basically allocating as as fairly and accurately as possible, like how that budget, who did what for that budget over the course of the month. And so that's happening at the end of the month. So Isaac, that's what you're talking about, I think. And then my suggested change would be that maybe what we do is for those project allocations, right, the percentages, we start at the beginning of the month with our assumptions, just like we're doing right now. But then let's say that it's now March 15th, and Isaac now has all of a sudden a lot more information about Gitcoin. And he's like, holy crap, I got to get somebody onto this, and I need it this next week, right? So in our Thursday call, we're like, hey, you know what, guys, let's agree. We got to shift some resources around. We got to like reallocate some, the small grants program needs more resources. And so, in that call, Nate, you're saying like, okay, I think, it comes down to like specific people, right? We just say, yeah, we need to actually free up some resources from SPI or whatever it is, internally facing project. Bear is like, hey, I you know what, I can peel off this for right now. I can do work. And just agree to the overall percentages and then just allocate by people at the end of the month.
I'll just say one last thing. I think that works great, and I think it's important that we have a sort of review periods for project allocations where we are able to change if needed. But I believe the key is on the first allocation, and so our focus should probably be on the first allocation, and instead of making it by assumptions, try to work towards having complete projects before doing the allocation, so that we can do the allocation based on the actual state of the project. Because first, the thing with reviews, I believe, if we do like if we are not careful, that may end up being way too harsh, or like a process that we must do every single month, and that takes up time, and maybe we don't need it. And so we would be doing a review. We would be spending way too much time on that, because it would be like at the beginning of the month we have this conversation to start the month. At the middle of the month we review, and at the end of the month we prepare the next month. So we would be the whole month talking about work, and with time that we could be using for work. And so if we focus on the first allocation, first is less time, and second, we need to have the project defined anyways. And third, I think it acts as a very good incentive mechanism for people to identify right away which projects need more work. Because then the thing with if we fail to do the first allocation properly, I think incentives shift very easily into, like, for example, right now the allocation is pretty flat. Most of it have 20, and then we have two things with 10%. I'm very tempted to say that I'm going to work, I don't know, on others, and which maybe which is not as important or urgent. It may not be as much work, but has the same amount of allocated. So I think first allocation is really important. And then if we enable some sort of flexible review period that maybe we don't do every time, or maybe we do a quick checkup on reviews, then I think that's fine.
So I think the chat. So I get what you're saying. I mean, basically, what you're saying is, hey, we need to come up with project plans anyways. Might as well use that as a way to drive the assumptions about time. I think the challenge I'm finding right now is that, for example, when I was working with Risha on the curation service, one of the things that we found, and I think this is true with all product development efforts, is that like even the best plans are like they're always unfolding, and so if you spend a whole bunch of time like speccing the details of a project, it after a while it kind of loses some of its efficacy. It's like an 80-20 rule, right? Like I think if we get it close enough, so like at the beginning of the month, I mean, it's clear that these project plans are essential. We got to get that. I think 80-20 rule on the project plans is probably the smartest thing to do. And just know that there's going to be things that we won't anticipate or details that won't emerge until like midway through the month. And so I think it does make sense to make it more bottoms up in terms of actual workload. And then we're going to need some way to kind of informally swarm and move our estimates of required resources around. Just kind of moving people between projects, I guess, as things change. I don't know. I think that's the challenge. The flexibility, like not over-speccing, getting the speccing just right, I guess. Right level of detail.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation, the one we're actually having. I'm still kind of like trying to get my head around it. I think there are different factors and different things that we need to consider, right? And we're probably not gonna have the solution right now. So what I'd suggest is probably to give this a try, right? Like I think we just came up with some improvements to the current process on kind of like defining some estimate percentages at the beginning of the month based on some basic specs for the projects. That's also something I really agree on, because I've been going through that myself, right? For me, it's been really challenging sometimes to be able to plan out how the project is going to look like in the future as things start coming up throughout the way, right? So maybe if we come up with some sort of and this is something that I've actually been thinking a lot recently in terms of how do we plan out the projects. Maybe we can again just simplify it, bring it out to the minimum necessary that we need to include for a project to begin. We can maybe talk about that in another moment. But if we have that defined, then that helps us to define some estimate percentages. And I think that's okay, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a budget, right? And budgets are not perfect always. They can vary, right? So if we have that, if we allow that flexibility, that allows us during the month to have these conversations where project leads have the ability to, in a way, I would say, like negotiate percentages according to current needs of the projects and in accordance to priorities. I think that'd be good. And then at the end of the process would be happening at the end of the month, where project leads would be assigning their corresponding funds to the participants, right? Like again, based on percentages. And that's where the kind of like the process would end, and then we would be already. I think we would have to begin like speaking of the next month's project like with some time in advance, right? So so we have something ready for the beginning of next month. But yeah, I think yeah, that's what I say. I think we just give it a try to this, just like we just mentioned it. We just talked about it and see how that goes, and we can keep improving throughout the way. Yeah, I don't think it's also like really worth it to keep trying to make it perfect right now, as it will constantly be changing. So, but I think it can bring us a lot of benefits and push us forward. At least these changes that everyone are suggesting.
You know, one thing to throw out is that, maybe a way of doing this is we start with kind of a bottoms up estimate, which means getting the project plans pulled together. Let's say like midway through the month, we're like, okay, we now know a lot more about small grants, what it's actually going to take. We can't wait until next month to adjust things. So, we're gonna need to adjust things now. But just know that it's like when we adjust, let's say we adjust March 15th, right? Let's say that that's the case. Then that becomes the going in assumption for the following month, for April. Like, so we don't have to keep redoing this. It's kind of like we just, like the project allocations, we can slide them around at any time based on the agreement of the team. And that becomes the going assumption for the next month, right? So we just don't have to keep, it's just like, it's like, the problem that we're facing is that when we begin the month, there's going to be information that we're not going to know that will affect project allocations. And so I think that's the main thing. And then the other thing is like the other shift that we're talking about here is basically doing the allocation by person at month end. So Bear, I want to hear your thoughts about that idea.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think we can give it a try. I think something that I also wanted to add to the conversation is that with all of this, I think in a way more responsibilities are starting to emerge for the project leads. So there's a document that I've been updating where and I've showed this before, like for how we work with projects. And I've been constantly updating it based on what we talk about. So one of these things is that I think we should really be aware of the different responsibilities that a project lead will have, right? And if we do this, that's probably be one of those responsibilities. Just like Nate was saying, that he had some conversations with Joseph, with Marathon Mind to evaluate their individual allocations. So that will be up to the project lead, right? And I guess we'll have to define some sort of deadline for when they can submit their percentages. So process-wise, we can send out the payments in time with not so much delay, and we can make things work efficiently. So yeah, kind of like the point is that I might bring this up maybe in another call, but maybe we should revisit this role of project lead and for everyone to have it more fresh and really know, right? Because we're talking about individual allocations, defining outcomes for the projects, right? Providing updates, reassessing percentages now during the month, so I think like different type of responsibilities are coming up, and I think are important that everyone is aware of what they have to do so they can properly do it. But yeah, like in terms of this, yeah, I think we can give it a try. I don't see why not.
I'll add something in. I think maybe we should probably move to the next topic. And I think actually what you said, I think made a lot of sense. I think we should probably do these allocations with the proposal, with the funding proposal, because we have to remember the monthly period is more like a sprint. It's not an economic period. And so I guess what I'm concerned is that we have spent 1 hour of what is supposed to be productive work time into talking financials, which is not bad. We have to talk about it. But if we are going to do these 3 times a month, every single month, I don't think that's going to work. And so I think we should really try to find a way to keep these monthly periods as work monthly periods, and leave money for probably longer term stuff, or I don't know, but just try to spend less time with this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, some of it's just unavoidable. Like we gotta. I mean, if we want input as a team, like Bear and I could probably just go figure this out. But like part of the whole thing is we want everybody to, like, this matters to people, right? Because it's money and it's how we organize ourselves. I'm hoping that these are tweaks as we roll this thing out. But I agree. I mean, let's move on. I think we've got enough here to move forward and have the right amount of flexibility. Yeah, let's move on. And then Bear, you and I can talk about this more next week, about how we tack this down and get this next level. All right.
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, the last thing about project management, just on this, is, Bear did an example. Basically, what we're talking about is outcomes, like outlining what the outcomes of the project are, and then project tracking, like breaking these things out into specific tasks. And so that's basically the next step, and we're going to have to do that for each one of these projects, basically. So that's going to be my next step, is for the TEA, like wrestling that thing down into like a set of things that that this team can actually do. And then I think Isaac, you're working on doing that for the small grants, and probably need a similar thing. It's not just the proposal, but probably for voting changeover. And same thing with SPI. Let's. Why don't we? I think that Isaac and Bear, we should just talk a little bit about what we want that to look like. I think we already have some sense of that, but I guess one of the questions that we're gonna have to wrestle with pretty soon is moving to Notion, like whether this changes things away from Notion. So more on this next week, I think. Let's talk about the voting changeover. So Nate, you got the proposal coming up. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that I think are a little bit tricky, having to do with the fact that we've got so many proposals coming through, and we want to set the right expectations for people. So, like, for instance, the stakeholder study is already up in conviction voting right now. If we suddenly were to turn off conviction voting while that's moving through, that wouldn't be very cool. So we've got to figure out how, and then there's all these other things. We've got the small grants pilot that need, like that. I pulled together a proposal yesterday, got some feedback from Isaac on it. That should be ready to go tomorrow to put up the conviction voting. And, that might be 5,000 die. It might even be less now that we've got the NS. But then we've got these other ones, like the coordination team season 2, and then the actual small grants proposal. And I think the challenge is going to be, like, do we try to like push these all through conviction voting and then switch it off, or do we? The thing I want to throw out is the possibility of running these two simultaneously as an interim strategy until we like get everything out of conviction voting. And what I'm wondering is whether we could run the season 2 funding proposal and maybe the small grant proposal through Dow voting as a test. And then once we prove that that works, then we shut off conviction voting. So I would like to get people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think if we can put proposals through TAL voting right now, I think that is preferable to conviction voting right now. I didn't see the other one go up already, so I guess it's up and going. It's unfortunate, but I think that'll probably be the last conviction voting that we have. If these proposals desire to go through conviction voting, are these all internal proposals that we have coming up? I know you mentioned the coordination one. What was the other one? The grants?
The rest of them are all ones that we have control over. But ultimately anybody can post something up on the forum, and so I think part of what this proposal that you're writing needs to do, and I'll mention this in my notes on it, but I think we need to just be very clear that's like, hey, once this passes, then like we're not going to be accepting any more conviction. We'll turn off the category of conviction votes in the forum or something like that, like that as like a.
Yeah, as part of the process here with the transition is that we need to articulate a plan for how we handle proposals, and that means most people who are going to submit proposals aren't going to be able to. It's not as user friendly as one might think to set up a proposal for TAL voting within Gardens. So that's something that it would be preferable that we go through and do ourselves, that as a kind of a coordinated entity where we say, okay, if you want to have a proposal, come talk to our, whoever's in charge of proposals or wants to look after proposals and say, hey, okay, it is my responsibility to put this up in TAL voting on behalf of this particular project and go through it that way. There's still a lot of open-ended questions about the path that we're moving forward towards. I'm really interested to see how the community responds to this proposal of shutting off conviction voting and using TAL voting. I know Livia in the document proposed to have another instance of TAL voting separate from the original TAL voting that we have right now. It might not be ideal, but it might be a good compromise for those who are opposed to shutting off conviction voting. So these are all things that are kind of up in the air still. But I do think that when it comes to the conviction voting, we should stop immediately. We do need to get some test runs with the current TAL voting parameters on this funding proposal. So if we can do the grants and the coordination funding within TAL voting upcoming, then I think that's the priority for us. And then after this conviction voting proposal for the stakeholder investigation, after that that's the last one. I think if anything emerges now, we talk to the author and say, hey, we're going to go through TAL voting. And hopefully that nobody posts anything right now, but if it does happen, then I suggest that we just reach out to them and say, hey, we're going through this different process now.
See, I think this is now that I think about this, I just sort of 10% being way too low, and probably this needs to be this needs to have the bigger allocation of the whole projects, because there's a lot of technical stuff, there's stakeholder engagement, there's documentation to change, and a whole bunch of stuff. But more specifically with the project, I think it's important that we get more than anything the timing right, because there's quite a few proposals. We don't have lots of engagement. So the second we put one up, we should probably aim to put all of them together, so that the all the engagement we may have, we are able to capture it. And I said myself that if it were for me, we would do this like immediately, but I get the sense that this is going to take some time. Like we're probably going to have some people appear out of nowhere complaining, or just not agreeing. So I think we may as well just go conviction voting as soon as possible to complete those proposals that are coming up, and work with everyone to ensure a smooth transition.
So what I would suggest is that we leave the stakeholder study, of course, and we try to get the pilot thing pushed through very quickly, because it's just so little funding, and we've got to do that quick. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we won't know until the proposal goes up exactly how much debate there. But I think what we probably should do is just know that, I mean, we'll know pretty quickly. Like we'll know it needs to go up for 5 days, I think, 4 or 5 days. So by this time next week, Nate, when are you thinking about posting it? Tomorrow?
It's posting tomorrow. Yep.
Okay.
Today's the last day for comments.
Okay. So, yeah, that would mean that, by the end of next week, we'll know whether there's a lot of pushback on this. So I think rather than trying to decide right now, I think, Isaac, we should nail that pilot thing and get that posted up on conviction voting ASAP. Even if it's at the same time as the stakeholder study, which is unfortunate, but we've got to get that pushed through. And the thing is, actually, just given that we have I haven't looked at the latest price of ETH, but I think it's like 1,600. So we could probably just put in for like 3,500 DAI, and I'm guessing we could get that passed pretty. And then just make the call at the end of next week on how we want to handle the the season 2 funding, because that proposal is going to be ready next week. Like I just need to get a little bit of feedback from the rest of you on that. So yeah, I think the goal should be that basically by the end of next week, we know that's going to be a TAO vote or conviction vote. But I think we should really try to get both of those as conviction vote. I mean, as TAO votes. Get the season 2, and then.
I will say that there's nothing wrong with doing it before there's approval for shutting off conviction voting. I think that if we use TAO voting, it's fine. We've always been able to use TAO voting to allocate funds from the common pool. It's just a different approach towards it. And so I don't see anything wrong, even if people oppose the shutting off of conviction voting. We can still use TAO voting for these proposals in a timely manner that matches up with our needs. So I don't see that as being a problem unless I'm missing something.
And actually, Nate, maybe part of what we do is we just pitch it that way. Say, hey, you know what? We've got these two, we've got one proposal that's going to be coming up really soon, and we want to test it out. We're going to do a TAO voting test, and make sure that we've figured this out. Just like embrace the uncertainty.
I think we have to be smart about that, because for example, with the transformation proposals and stuff, we had some drawbacks because we weren't able to go around the process, even though there's many ways to do things. And so if people go against conviction voting, why do we think that they will support using tau voting even though tau voting is available? Because the process for funding is conviction voting. So maybe people, maybe someone sort of requests to do a formal change of the process first. I don't know, but I think we have to consider all situations.
I would say that Nate, maybe the way to do it is like with the proposal, don't specifically call out this test, but like we can do it as a comment. Let's see what the feedback is, see what the pushback is, if there is any. I haven't looked at your document yet. I will today, but I'm assuming there has some explanation as to like why we're making this change. Yeah, I mean, I think we've been able with the votes for the strategic framework and for I mean we've been able to pass overwhelmingly with these the strategic framework and then the transition and the formation of the coordination team. My guess is that we'll be able to do the same and get like pretty good positive turnout. And yeah, I mean, I think you know what? I think we need to move on. We're just kind of dealing with a lot of uncertainty until we actually get. But what if we just proceed with the small grant pilot using conviction voting as the last one, and just try to push that through over the course of this next week? How do people feel about that? Nate, you in particular, and Isaac, how do you two feel about that?
Can you repeat it, please?
Push the small grant pilot, which is basically going to be somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 die. So it should probably pass pretty quickly. If we, the problem is a lot of people are going to have their vote on the study.
I think that both of these votes should go directly to tau voting whenever you want. I don't think it's a problem at all. I can mention within the forum that we were moving forward with this as a kind of a test run for these two proposals, and I think that there's no reason we should put it in conviction voting. Let's just be done with it and just say, hey, we're shutting it off after this proposal. Because this is too much coordination among token holders to actually go through and wait on making sure that they're parking it in the proposal that they support, or shifting between the two proposals, the stakeholder proposal and this one. I think this is a time that we can just say, hey, let's get these tau voting system underway and make sure that we can do this correctly, because we do need to practice as a group. Not just one of us, but all of us need to be able to go through and do these proposals together to make sure that we understand how tau voting works, because it is a little bit, it's not user friendly. So in terms of making sure that we're putting the right amount of funds into the proposal is really the tough part. And so we just need to do this together as a group, and I think this is something that we should do whenever you feel like it. Whenever as quickly as possible. I mean, it could be tomorrow. I think that would be fine. I really don't think we should bog down on too much what others think. This has always been a capability of the gardens, is to allocate funding from tau voting. So I think that we just go ahead and do it, and just let the chips fall where they may. I think this is not something that we should focus too much about. I just think we should just try to get this conviction voting shut down as quickly as possible and move on.
I mean, I kind of agree. I have the same opinion, but I think like at least for the small grant, we have to be very careful because that's a compromise with Gitcoin, and I'm just not sure. Like if we have one shot at publishing that proposal sort of in time, I don't want to go around and try voting, and maybe we don't get the 80% quorum, or maybe we get some backlash. I'm not sure. Like I'm down, but I also I don't know.
Yeah, I think that we'll be able to find the fund. I mean, we've already got like a third of the funds in the ENS grant, and I think we've got enough slack. Bear and I will talk afterwards about how much slack we have in our actual budget. I haven't taken salary over the last couple months, and so that might give us some of the slack that we cover it just in case. So I think we need to move on. I think, Nate, I agree with what you're saying, and let's just reassess. Actually, after you have this posted, it may be that it's total silence, and we've just been talking about this, or it may be that there is pushback. So, yeah, let's see. But I think it makes sense. I've come around to agreeing that we just basically need to like get those two votes up together and make a push at the same time. It's like, hey, these are the two things we want to do. This is our first test. We're asking you to vote at the same time. Yeah, I think it's good. And then we'll see this time next week. We'll know a lot more.
But I will say it's very, very important that we all do this together in terms of making the proposal, and whether we do it in the Tuesday meeting, just making it a priority. I think it's really important that we all understand how the TAL voting works as a group. Being able to explain it to other people who are interested in making proposals and being able to set those proposals up on their behalf is something that we all need to be able to do.
Okay. All right. So, Nate, I think you and I just need to coordinate a little bit on, and just to be 100% clear on this, like, Nate, you're taking lead on this, because Isaac was doing some work on this too. So I just want to be super clear so that we're like nobody's stepping on each other's.
I mean, I haven't formally taken the lead, but like I can. It's one of those things where it's just like I really don't see it being beyond this month as kind of a project that we're doing. So I would rather this not be the focus of our project allocations. This is something that I hope to have by this will be behind us by mid-March.
Isaac, how are you feeling about it?
I think by the importance of this, and we are pretty much all pretty involved. So I think as long as we keep the conversation, yeah, it's fine. I don't know. I'm up to do whatever is needed.
Okay. So I think Nate, you take the lead on this, and then Isaac, just know that you and I will be there as backup to help. Sound good? Everybody okay with that? Okay, so thank you. This is a complicated one. So then back up all. Okay. All right. Let's go into the review period. Barry, do you want to take this?
Well, for the review periods, basically it was just about the role self-review template, like I mentioned before. I don't know. We can leave that for async, and it was more in terms of the budgets for February and for March. For February, I was hoping that I could show like the how it all went, but payments haven't been sent out yet, so I'm still kind of like unsure how it's gonna turn that out. But I'll probably can share that also async, and so everyone can see like the how the funds were allocated. And for March, yeah, that's the only thing, like the percentages. I don't know if it would be a good idea to try to maybe similar to what we did the last month, maybe have people just suggest some percentages that they think could work, and just kind of like like now following this new process that we just came up with, just have some agreement in these initial percentages for March, and then we can readjust throughout the month. So maybe that's something we could do now. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, yeah, it sounds like basically what you're saying is like we don't have to spend a lot of time. You can be able to do most of this, I think. But yeah, so how about those percentages? Like, are those close enough for right now? Do we know enough about like small grants and the TEA partnership to say, like, personally, I don't know if I can use more than 20%. I just haven't thought through yet exactly who I would call on.
Maybe I well, maybe we do this exercise on Tuesday, because I think there's a few other topics that are a bit time sensitive. So for example with we talked about proposals and stuff, and so we have to see if there's anything else coming up for grants and whatnot. So maybe we try to finish the agenda today and we do the exercise on Tuesday.
Yeah. I think that going top down on this, the initial percentages is a pretty good method in terms of it. But we do need, I think it speaks to our conversation earlier about reviewing that. I think maybe we have a review period mid-month, each month, that says, hey, okay, let's really change these percentages and make that into a practice. Because I think that, it really is a hard, unless you're looking at it from the broad picture, and Bear and Gideon, you guys have looked at this from the broad picture of these are the projects the initiatives that we have going, these are the priorities. And I think by setting that example and saying, hey, these are the priorities for this month, let's focus on doing that. And then, mid-month we go, hey, this needs to change and this needs to change. I think is a good process for how we do it, and not to spend too much time on, like you said, setting percentages or being too granular in terms of how we allocate this funding, until we have a better picture of like what actual work has been done on these projects. And I think mid-month we know exactly how much efforts we've been putting towards certain areas, and we can adjust accordingly. Okay.
So basically we've got the first draft of these things, and what I would say is, like, Isaac and me, once we have our projects for the TA and small grants program nailed down a little bit more, we just basically talk with you guys on a Thursday call or a Tuesday call. Hey, look, you know what? We now have this in more detail. We think we need to shift the allocations follow. And then the only drag for UNAID is just, and I think let's not spend a bunch more time on but like that just means that the SPI needs to be a little flexible. So the one thing I would recommend for you, look at, like, you, Marathon Mind, and Joseph, like, what are the things you absolutely need to keep doing in order to keep it moving forward? Just like be clear about that.
Sounds good.
Okay. Isaac, do you want to take the small grants thing? I'm going to catch up on these notes. You take it and run.
Okay, so first things first, as Gideon said at the beginning of the call, we got the ENS grant, which is 1 ETH. We haven't received it yet because it's not a non-check vote, like it's not executed automatically. And as soon as I get the grant, I will just bridge it to Gnosis and send it to the coordination multisig, or maybe we set up a separate multisig for grants now that we are planning to do that. But that's a small detail. I don't think that matters too much right now. Pilot proposal. So sorry. So Gideon started writing a draft for a proposal that would be asking for about 5K XDAI, and sort of explains a bit of the status of the proposal, of the program and whatnot. I think that's pretty standard. We've talked about that many times. I won't go too deep into that. There's one thing I'll talk about now first. So just right at the beginning of this call, I received a message from Seneca. Seneca is one of the founders of Nouns, and he's also sort of, I don't know if the main developer, but he's a developer with Prop House, which is the sort of a small grants initiative of Nouns. And he said that they were ready, and if we wanted to do a round now, we could do it. So I don't know, probably worth just chatting about it, just seeing opinions. I think maybe this is pretty new. This is just what I thought now. Maybe we do 5K with Gitcoin and we use the ETH from ENS for these. Maybe I tell him nope, we cannot at this time. I don't know. I'll open the floor for comments in 1 second. And the other comment is about the size. This is something we have to look at. I have to sit down and make some numbers, but we have to start thinking about the size of funding that we are going to allocate in with which frequency, so that we have some dynamism, but we also don't spend too much on it. I have one other thing, but I'll open it now for comments, and I'll say the other thing later.
What's involved with the Downs DAO, the prop house thing? Like, what would we have to do?
Well, I have yet to ask him everything, but it's pretty straightforward. Like those rounds, I've seen rounds with even less than 1 ETH. So and they are not like super complex. It's pretty much the same thing as the ENS grants, So pretty straightforward. Doesn't seem like there's too much work involved. So yeah, I think it's a nice opportunity, and also because at first I was thinking of doing a fork of ENS grants. This way, if we use Prop House, they maintain all the infrastructure, and we just do rounds on top of it. And it has been running for longer than Bitcoin's new protocol, of course, but I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I just don't know enough about it. I mean, it makes me nervous to get too fragmented in our attention. That's what I would say. I'm not sure what the upside would be. Exposure, I think. What do you think the upside is?
Well, I think there's obviously exposure. Nouns is a pretty hot DAO right now, but also just data. Like if we are running sort of test rounds, we may as well run them close with both options and just see what may be a better fit. I'm not saying we have to do them like right away, but maybe we consider doing, if Gitcoin is in March, we do the other in April or May or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, I don't know. We can spend very little on this, so it's just a matter of seeing if we really want to do them, because it's easy and fast to set them up. It's also, I guess, the similar to Gitcoin. It's about, now that they are slowly opening it up, we would get more help than if we wait for the full product to be outside and then we are on our own.
How are the award? How are, like, what's the token? I just can't. It's been a long time since I looked at it. So what's it denominated in?
Well, if you want, I'll just share my screen, I think, and do it very quickly. So essentially, Prop House works with houses. So each community has a house. 1 second, it's loading. Okay. Each community has one house, and most communities, because the treasury of nouns is denominated in ETH, most communities, subDAOs of nouns and nouns itself, use Ether. And so within the nouns house, you get multiple rounds. Some of them are open rounds. Some of them are more specific. And really, it's up to you to see the terms or the money amount. Like this one is doing barely 2 ETH, for example, in total. So 0.5 for winners. It has requirements and whatnot. And for example, this one is 7K for 3 winners. So that's quite a bit. I don't know. It's the same as ENS, and that would get us token voting right away, because the way winners are selected is by people with tokens voting on the proposals and signaling their preferences.
I'm going to recommend that I think you and I probably need to just chat about this a little bit more, because we have other things we need to talk about. I really want to make sure that we cover the community. I guess, the thing I would ask for you to just think a little bit about is, like, attention is just such a hard thing to get. And, if you could imagine trying to explain to the TEC, actually the token engineering network and kind of the field itself, like why we're doing both of these things, and how we would really expect to explain, like, oh, for this one, use this one, and for this one, I could just see us kind of getting lost in that and being very confusing to people. So
I agree. I thought, I just mentioned it because he sent me a message right now, but yeah, I completely agree. I think, maybe the last 2 things, just to see if there's any comments about the size. I don't know if anyone has like a first thought of estimate amount of funds that we should be able to afford, and then the scope of rounds. So what does everyone think about having them being sort of generally open to anything that has to do with token engineering, obviously, or if we should focus more on have more focused rounds, so that each round or whatever has more of a theme. Let's see if anyone has any comments about it.
I think going broad and small is the best route right now. Just kind of get here's a pilot. Here's $2,500 or $1,500 or $5,000. And we can reach out to these kind of small initiatives that we've seen before that have hesitated to put their proposal up in conviction voting, for example. So I think broad and small funds is best at the beginning, just to say, hey, this is what we're doing, and then we can grow it from there. By the way, I do have one question regarding the ENS and the potential nouns. Is like how are we receiving these funds? Do we have or are these funds being distributed through mainnet? Do we have a multi-sig on mainnet? Do we need to bridge? Do we what is the process for that?
Well, if as far as I understand, for ENS small rounds, they give the money to whoever made the proposal, and proposals are only made by EOA, so like individual addresses. So yeah, I guess I'm going to receive the money and I'll send it right away. That's the question, right?
Yeah, I was just curious about that, and let's see if we need to actually set up kind of a ENS for the token engineering commons on mainnet or wherever we need to have whatever chains we need to start thinking about receiving funds at.
Yeah, I
Just so
think
you don't hold any liability.
yeah, it's a good point. And also, as we start applying for more grants, like we need a better mechanism to receive grants and not have it go right into the common pool, so that we have to then use a vote to like pull it out again. Like that's not good. Right? That'd be counterproductive.
Yeah, well, laser tag is deployed on mainnet. Uh, I don't know about laser tag because I don't think most of the signers are that engaged. I don't know if there's any ENS for the T Commons right now, but I think that would be nice. But anyways, in all honesty, for this, at least for the ENS small programs, there's no way around individual addresses. So it is what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, the laser tag is on my short list of things to get done in the next month or two, because we do need to either dissolve that or change the signatories.
Yeah. Okay. More feedback on the scope of rounds. My view on that is, again, synergy. Like I think if we can, the sooner we can focus that on what we're saying we're doing in the strategic framework, which is focus on education, the better off we're going to be. Now, it may be that we have to start with like an experiment that's a little bit more open, but I think that the more that we can focus and create synergy and create real momentum for token engineering education in the first year or so, I think the better off we're going to be. That's my view.
Anyone has any other comments? I have comments of my own, but I have already shared them with you, Gideon. Probably it's better if we talk about this later, just so that we have time for the other things. So I'll count down just to see if anyone else has comments. 5. Okay.
Yeah, just to say something like, yeah, I would agree as well that everything we do should be aligned to the strategy and that we are putting out. And in terms of the size of the grants, yeah, I think smaller would probably be good. So we have like more opportunities and more rounds that we can throw out. I don't know. In my mind, that sounds like more interesting and allow us to play around with different type of initiatives in a way. So yeah. But I don't know. I haven't really have like strong opinions on this.
Do you foresee the voting of these rounds being done in TEC tokens? Is that how it would work?
I don't think so. At least not for the first ones, because
Okay.
first there's the chance that it's deployed on Gnosis, but that's not like 100% sure. And then because of I guess it is because of security reasons, the list of tokens enabled to donate isn't like open to any token on the network, and we aren't just sure yet if how easy or what's the process to add new tokens. Some of the details with Gitcoin are kind of on hold because they are in Denver, but that's on the list of questions we have once we are able to sit down and talk with them again.
Yeah, I think making that a priority where TEC tokens are the voting tokens for these types of grant rounds would be absolutely amazing. And then if that were the case, I would definitely change the strategy to being, we have maybe like one huge grant and say, hey, we have a $10,000 education grant here. Come apply and compete to vote, and see some token utility generated in that way.
Well, actually, just to finish, what I'll do is I'll send the HackMD I was working on for the grants, which sort of outlines my first thoughts on the grants program before getting the opportunity to work with Gitcoin. I think we shouldn't. I think the Gitcoin protocol in general is more appropriate for bigger funding, and so we should probably try to optimize it for fundraising to be able to have the matching pool filled with others' money, but that comes at the price of not using TEC because most programs are not okay with essentially a treasury that's controlled by TEC tokens. And if we want TEC voting, then we have something smaller. So yeah, I don't know. That's a conversation for another day.
Okay, you're going to be pulling together the plan anyway, so that I think that'll be a big part of the plan, like figuring that out, right? So we can talk. You just let me know when you want to put that on. I think I would recommend actually having part of the larger group with Griff and Tam and anybody else. All right, let's turn to communications. The thing we talked about on Tuesday is wanted move things forward with some process improvements, and then metrics. Right, that's what we talked about on Tuesday. And what we said, there's kind of general agreement that the priorities, all grants, is the first and most important thing. SPI, curation, events, and share it. And then in addition, that we focused on partners and helping to promote our partners. We had some questions about Giveth Galaxy. I'll just mention one quick thing. I was talking with Max, who runs the Trusted Seed. I had a nice conversation with him yesterday. And by the way, he's very interested in the idea of a conference or an unconference. But he made one important point, which is it's like actually like you look at our constituency. Yeah, there are a lot of people, token engineers, who don't really care about Giveth Galaxy, but a lot of the hatchers, who are the kind of the core funders, came out of Common Stack and came out of that kind of the network of people who care about that stuff. So it's not as clear cut as what we thought. We've got kind of like a constituency. So I think there's just more work to do on the partner prioritization. I don't think that's a good day. But what I do think would be good is just the thing that we touched on Tuesday, which is like putting together some process for like scheduling different types of activity. I have a couple other things I just want to mention, which are, I think that one of our best strategies is really going to be, focusing on networks of people. So for example, like, we saw some nice little uptick yesterday around this grant. Through that, there were some people who actually, are really interested in public goods. So I think it would be really good for us to start networking around public goods. Like people with ENS, but also NounsDAO and others. And then also I think the reputation stuff was, as we've talked about, like opportunity for us just using our Twitter account to start to build relationships. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is just, I now have access to the Twitter account, which I didn't have before. And I was just yesterday just playing around with just like having conversations with people through the TEC account, you know, just a couple of times. But I think having like some type of, you know, more conversation, like trying to engage people in conversation as the TEC is going to be, that's really important, building relationships. So I guess I'll just stop there. Good to maybe just open it up for a little bit, minutes, to just see what you think about this idea of like the schedule, how we might do that, and then this idea of like clusters of networks, like that are not just token engineering, but like try to focus on some specific areas, and then what it would be like to actually start engaging people in more conversation.
Yeah, so actually right now this idea just came to my mind, like thinking on how do we want to handle this communication side of things, and how do we want to come up with a better process for it. And it's interesting because it looks like we haven't been able to do it for some time, to have like a really strong and stable process for that. So, you know, I just was thinking like, what would it happen? Maybe it's not ideal, but maybe as a way to begin building the process, what would it look like if, instead of dealing with communications from like it is right now, like from a role point of view and from a kind of like a established process point of view, what if we could take on it from a project point of view? And then if we do that, we could probably come up with more clear outcomes. For example, for like similar to what we're doing with the rest of the projects, right? So maybe for communications project during this month, we want the outcomes of creating a schedule, right? Of engaging with a certain amount of people in Twitter, of like reaching out to certain networks of people, you know? So we clearly define these outcomes that need to be covered during this month for the project of, let's just call it like quote unquote communications projects. And we give it a try like that. The same thing, we define a lead that, and then maybe we could take I know as if this would impact you and also like the people that have the content creator role. But basically what I'm thinking is that maybe we could take that funding that is there and just put it into a project itself, and then use the same process for projects that we are talking about today with that specific project. So at the end of the month, again, the people working with for the communications project, they would get assigned their individual percentage as well, based on their work, based on the outcomes that were completed. And then throughout the process of completing this project, I think we will start coming up with an actual process, right? So this idea of having projects that then suddenly can become known processes that then can become roles, well-defined roles, right? So it would be kind of like the end goal, that maybe next month or in a couple of months, this actually becomes the process we actually use for communications, right? So it's just kind of like a different approach on taking comms for this month or for the following two. But I don't know. I don't know. Right now that I'm thinking about it and saying it out loud, I think it makes sense to me. I don't know what people think. I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts, and also Acid and Joseph. Marathon Man, I think, left, but yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Acid. Because I do think this has a lot to do with you. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Sounds like a good idea, because yeah, I was going to say that Marathon Mind needs a salary, because he has been doing a really great work helping the communications area. This month I have been very absent because of personal issues, and without Marathon Mind, I think Twitter will be dead now. So Marathon Mind has been like a really great supporter. Jenny Art has been supporting a lot. Yeah, I think that this initiative that Barry is proposing can help that area. And I think that that will not affect us at all, and it will be not too different as we work now. Just that we will have like a more options to work and to collaborate. So yeah, and also I think that we need to collaborate more with I don't know if it's the correct word, but work with influencers. I don't know, crypto influencers. Maybe tag them also in the next Twitter Spaces that we are having with Nate. Maybe have like a special guest that help us to gain more engagement on the Twitter Spaces, and with that we will get more engagement in our regular tweet at schedule. So yeah. I don't know.
I was gonna say, Acid. I think that especially when it comes to the SPI, we're gonna have set schedules for things, and so having kind of I think in terms of helping better manage the coordination around communications, Marathon Mind and Jay Art, I think are very eager to help. Like I know Joseph has been working a lot on the communication side of things, of how to craft narratives for the research groups, the interest groups, and so on. But to have a kind of a shared document that we all work from, that says, hey, this is the SPI Twitter engagement document where Marathon Mind or Joseph can go in there and say, hey, these are going to be kind of these recurring tweets that happen every week to remind people that there's the reputation systems meeting on Friday, that there's a Twitter Spaces on Monday. Here's the agenda for that Twitter Spaces. Making sure that we kind of streamline that process as much as possible, and we kind of set you up in a role where you're kind of advising on these things to both Marathon Mind and Joseph in terms of the communications, and having kind of this structure underneath you that allows you to better handle these situations as they come forward. And that goes for all the different areas and projects that Bear mentioned before, where we kind of look at this from a project-based standpoint, where we say, hey, here's a Google Sheets or an Excel document with our Twitter activity that we want to have, and there's tabs on the bottom that say, hey, this is for the SPI, this is for the grants, this is for just general announcements, but we have something that you can manage, that you can own, in terms of how you present it to the world. But then the second part of that is making sure that we have the right access for these individuals. I know that I'm not sure about the credentials management for Twitter or who has access to Twitter, but if something needs to happen in that realm to give access to Joseph or Marathon Mind, then we should go ahead and execute on that. But I think setting up the process is just a matter of getting these things, these systems in place for you to better manage the communication on Twitter, because that's what we're mainly focused on right now, is the Twitter Spaces or Twitter in general. And so I think that is our main communication to the outside world, and that by setting that up, it'll allow you to free yourself to focus on things like strategy and communications efforts that are outside the realm of just tweeting every day.
Just to add on to everyone's point, so sorry I'm late, guys. I just literally came back home from a flight, so I'm a bit tired. But I was going to say, yeah, I definitely do agree with what Bear was saying with regards to doing it as a project first, to kind of like work out the irons and that all the creases and iron out the process, and then once you have it streamlined, then it becomes like a proper role. I also agree with what Acid said, and also Nate, with regards to having a shared document that can be viewed by everybody, and then documenting the methods and types of communications as well. And also, I think it also in that document should be a section to monitor. Let's say, for example, how many people are joining the Twitter Spaces, and therefore plan the strategies from there for what type of audiences or what.
We lost you there, Joseph.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Wait, can other people hear him or not?
No.
No, I think
Okay.
your
No.
audio went out.
Try it
Well,
again.
I just say something very quickly if he doesn't talk. I'll be him first. Well, so it's a bit of a packed comment. There's a few things in there. First things, I think this is the case for Notion, because it is impossible to make like a nice structure around communications and clarity. Like it's just meant for more standard projects. Then, with regards to partners and communications in general, I think it's important that we separate things. So, for instance, one thing is external communications, which I very strongly feel that shouldn't include the Giveth Galaxy. And the second thing is more like internal or stakeholder communications, where there's people that overlaps with common stack in the Giveth Galaxy, and there are stakeholders because they hold the token and whatnot. But I think it's because the issue with trying to please everybody on every single communication channel is that then we end up where we are now, and that's my other point. The biggest issue with the TEC is that it doesn't have any identity. You go around any profile, and you can see a very nice identity. Like, I don't know, Gitcoin is a public good steward that's a bit funny, has some memes, and they make I don't know, they make funny things. ENS is a bit more professional, public goods focused, but they also have their ground on domain names. Like, that's their thing, because obviously it's ENS. You see the Token Engineering Academy, and the Token Engineering Academy is also super serious, but it's also very informative with regular threads that explain technical things in a lot of detail. And I guess the question for the TEC is, what the hell is a TEC? And I don't think the TEC has any identity, and we have to find identity. And probably one way to find it is by looking at others and seeing what's the space. Because, for example, we probably cannot or shouldn't compete doing the same things that the academy does, because they already sort of have their territory there. And yeah, I'll shut up now.
So we have just 2 minutes. I agree. The branding and identity is super important. I don't think we're going to solve that in the short term. Really important thing. And as we start to do the pitch for the merge and we start to do more fundraising, I have to nail that. So that's like a longer term that I personally am hoping to be able to spend some more time or that work. But in the short term, I think having some type of project that includes some type of plan is a good idea. I think Notion would be good. Question is, who can take the lead on that? Are there, who's interested in working on that? Let's just have a quick flash of emojis. Who would be interested in doing? Okay, Joseph. Okay.
I'm able to help because I did help a bit on the end of the year in January, but I just don't think I have lots of time right now.
Mm-hmm. So I would be able to help as well. Maybe what we can do is, and Acid, I saw that you were interested.
Yeah, probably me too. Not as a lead, but to contribute as well. I'll be interested as well.
Okay, we are out of time. So here's what I'm going to suggest. We on Tuesday bring this up. I know this is kind of drawing this out over the course of, but it's important that we get this figured out. Basically, what we're going to need is somebody to hear. And, you know, the problem, just to be very clear about this, is that in terms of overall priority, sadly, this is not at the top of our list in terms of overall research. We have to get this figured out, but like we've got these other priorities we're also working on that are going, you know, that are taking me away. So we've got to figure out how to write something to know that we're not going to get this perfect, but we've got to make progress on it. So, what I think I just need to think about this, and I may ping some of you, of course, about thoughts. I mean, let me ask this. Does anybody have like a strong sense of like, I would like to lead this?
I would like to what, sorry?
Does anybody have a strong sense of, I would like to lead this effort, pulling this project together?
I mean, I would, but if it's not high on the priority list of like stuff to do like immediately, then, you know, I'd rather focus on what needs to be done immediately, and then like, you know, do this on like the back burner once the priorities have been met, if that kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what I'm saying is that this is important to get done, but the ambition of it is what we need to right size. So, okay, we're a little bit over on time right now. So, you know, I would encourage, you know, if this is something that you feel like you'd like to lead on, maybe just ping me afterwards, and then we'll get some thoughts together for next week and try to just try to nail this. Just get this investment the right size and have some type of plan. But I think turning it into a project. All right, a little bit fuzzy end there, but yeah, we're doing our best. Okay, so let's we'll wrap it up here, and
Can I make one more announcement before we leave?
yeah.
Tomorrow, 10 a.m. PST, we have the Reputations Open Research Group. We're still trying to bootstrap this, and so haven't got around to the promotional aspects of it yet. But if you have time tomorrow at 10 a.m., please come join us. We're gonna submit articles around reputation and its relation to expertise, and we are going to kind of dive into how the research group actually operates on a weekly basis, the weekly meetings. And so would love to have all of you there for that if you have time for it. If not, no worries. But I just wanted to put that out there. So thank you.
Okay. And Nate, one thing just on that end, I think it would be good to start trying to find some people outside to start, you know, who are like really interested in the topic, to maybe start showing up there too. They don't have to be like top in the field, but just because everybody here has got their hands full, so like, I think it'll be start diversifying.
Totally understandable.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Hey, thank you. Good call. See you on next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Take
See you
care.
next week.
Bye.